Did you ever imagine that a simple 1-cent coin, the kind that jingles at the bottom of your pocket or rests unnoticed in an old jar on the shelf, could be worth an astonishing $32 million, turning what was once considered just spare change into one of the most valuable treasures in American numismatic history? Because today we're diving deep into the story of the 1981 USA 1-cent coin, a piece that at first glance looks like any other penny but hides behind its coppery surface a tale of rarity, error, minting anomalies, and collector obsession that transformed it into a legendary coin commanding jaw-dropping sums at auctions and private sales. And to understand why this particular coin reached such heights of value, we need to look closely at its background. The year of 1981 was pivotal in United States coinage history. The mint was still producing pennies primarily in copper, weighing 3.11 grams, before the transition in 1982 to copper-plated zinc pennies weighing just 2.5 grams, meaning that 1981 represents the final full year of traditional copper cents. And while that fact alone makes them historically significant, the real intrigue lies in the minting variations, mistakes, and rare surviving examples that catapulted certain 1981 cents into the stratosphere of value, with errors like double dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, and transitional anomalies giving them extraordinary appeal to collectors. And when you add the fact that pristine examples in gem mint state or proof condition are already scarce due to circulation and the passage of time, the value skyrockets further, especially when a particular specimen carries an error so dramatic that it becomes a one-of-a-kind piece. Imagine a double die obverse where Lincoln's profile shows ghostly doubling along the eye, nose, or inscriptions, or a reverse where the Lincoln memorial columns blur into each other like a shadowed mirage. Those minting accidents, usually caught and discarded, sometimes escaped into circulation, and the handful of survivors became legends, valued at hundreds of thousands, even millions. And in the case of the most famous 1981 cent error, it became the foundation for this rumored $32 million valuation. And to grasp how collectors and investors drive up such value, think about the psychology of rarity. In the coin world, rarity and demand create the perfect storm, and the 1981 cent offers that storm, not only being a last of an era copper issue but also hosting an array of error types that appeal to specialized collectors who chase categories like off-center coins, die cracks, die caps, and transitional errors. For example, a coin struck on the wrong planchet, like a dime planchet, would be dramatically undersized yet retain all the details of a cent, and such an oddity instantly gains legendary status. So when stories spread of a 1981 penny carrying a nearly flawless double die with full copper brilliance, or another being struck on a transitional experimental planchet, collectors around the globe began to speculate, auctions buzzed, and rumors of multi-million-dollar trades started circulating, elevating the coin into the mythic realm of $32 million value. And let's not forget condition plays a massive role too. Coins graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC with designations like MS 68 red or higher are nearly impossible to find for copper cents of this era, because copper spots, toning, and bag marks degrade most examples. So when one or two specimens survived in immaculate condition, they became coveted trophies for elite collectors willing to pay fortunes to own them, further pushing the market perception that the 1981 cent wasn't just a coin but a historical artifact of immense cultural value. Now think about the excitement this generates in the numismatic community. Stories of ordinary people stumbling upon rare coins and pocket change fuel global treasure hunts, and every coin roll hunter, metal detectorist, and estate sale picker dreams of finding that elusive 1981 cent with the right error or flawless surface, because such a discovery could change their life overnight. It's not just about money, it's about the thrill of unearthing history, holding in your hand a piece that slipped through the cracks of the mint's quality control, a survivor that shouldn't exist, but does, and because of that it carries a mystique that money alone cannot explain. Now imagine the scene at auctions where these coins appear, the room buzzing with anticipation, collectors on the edge of their seats, dealers on the phones, online bidders refreshing their screens, and then the hammer drops at a price no one thought possible, headlines announce another record, and the legend of the 1981 1 cent grows even larger. It's this cycle of rarity, demand, myth, and media coverage that pushes the valuation into the tens of millions, and in the case of the famed $32 million rumor, it represents not just the sale of a coin but the power of collective fascination, and the 1981 cent sits perfectly in that narrative, bridging the old world of solid copper coinage with the modern era of zinc cents, reminding us how even the smallest coin can carry enormous weight in history and culture. So the next time you come across a 1981 penny, take a closer look, study the details, check for doubling, Inspect the edges, weigh it, because you never know, your humble cent might hold secrets that could make it worth more than a mansion, a yacht, or even a lifetime of wages. And with stories like these captivating the world, it's no wonder the 1981 USA 1 cent has entered the Hall of Fame as one of the most talked about coins in American history, worth big money, sparking dreams, and igniting the imagination of collectors everywhere. And before we wrap up, if you enjoyed this deep dive into the mysterious and valuable 1981 1 cent coin and want to keep uncovering more hidden treasures and shocking coin stories, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another chance to discover how history, rarity, and a touch of luck can turn an ordinary coin into a fortune. Next, today's deep dive where we uncover the hidden mysteries of one of the most surprising treasures in American coinage history, the 1991 1 cent coin, a piece of currency that normally rests unnoticed in jars, drawers, and pockets, but in rare instances has been known to reach values as high as $13 million because of unique minting errors, striking mistakes, and extraordinary quirks that have captured the attention of numismatists, historians, and investors across the globe. And while most people see a penny as insignificant, the stories behind error coins remind us that history, rarity, and accident can transform even the smallest denomination into a life-changing artifact. So let's explore in depth why the 1991 penny is so important, what makes it valuable, and the possibilities that contribute to its extraordinary worth. Beginning first with the idea that mint errors are not simply accidents but windows into the complicated process of coin production at the United States Mint, where millions of pennies were struck in 1991 using zinc planchets coated in copper following the composition change of 1982, and while most were produced perfectly, a handful emerged with unusual features that collectors covet, such as doubled dies, off-center strikes, broad strikes, die cracks, misaligned dies, and transitional planchet errors, each one telling a unique story. And when such a coin is preserved in pristine condition, graded by experts at PCGS or NGC, and authenticated as a genuine rarity, its value can skyrocket beyond imagination. And that is where the rumored $13 million 1991 penny comes into play, because when scarcity meets demand, prices can reach mythical proportions, driven not only by rarity but by the human fascination with mistakes that slip through the cracks of an otherwise carefully controlled minting system. And consider for example the double die error, where the die itself is engraved twice at slightly different angles, producing a shadow-like doubling on the design features such as the date, lettering, or Lincoln's profile, which collectors cherish because each one is distinct and instantly recognizable under magnification. And if a 1991 penny with a strong double die were to surface in high mint state red condition, it could command enormous bids, not just for its rarity but because it represents a visible anomaly born of human error and mechanical imperfection. And then we have the off-center strike, where the planchet is misaligned with the dies and the image is stamped partly off the coin, leaving part of the blank planchet visible, and the further off-center the strike while still retaining the full date, the greater the appeal to collectors, because it becomes not just currency but an art piece of randomness. And then broad strikes occur when the retaining collar fails and the metal expands outward during striking, producing a larger, distorted coin that nonetheless remains legal tender. Yet these oddities are instantly recognized by seasoned collectors. And die cracks too, where fractures in the die leave raised lines or cuts on the struck coins. And while minor cracks are common, dramatic ones, especially those altering Lincoln's portrait or the Lincoln Memorial reverse, can become highly desirable. And misaligned die errors where the obverse and reverse do not line up properly give an eerie tilted appearance. Once again a magnet for error enthusiasts. And then there is perhaps the most fascinating possibility of all, transitional errors, where a coin is struck on the wrong planchet, such as a leftover copper planchet from 1982 being used in 1991, creating an ultra-rare relic of an earlier composition that slipped unnoticed into circulation. And such transitional errors can reach staggering values because they represent a complete anomaly in composition, something that should not exist but does. And the 1991 1 cent has been surrounded by rumors of just such rare transitional pieces. Some supposedly tested and weighed at higher than expected gram levels, sparking speculation that copper planchets accidentally survived beyond their discontinuation date and entered circulation, fueling the mythos that one such coin could be the one commanding $13 million, because in numismatics, rarity plus lore equals astronomical worth. And part of what drives these extraordinary valuations is not just the coin itself but the stories built around it, the history of how it came to be, how few exist, and how collectors compete fiercely at auctions, driving up bids to levels unimaginable for a coin whose face value is 1 cent. And we cannot overlook the role of condition, because a coin's grade dramatically changes its value, with most circulated 1991 pennies being worth only face value, but a gem mint state red specimen with an error can leap into tens of thousands or more, and when combined with unique provenance, rumors, and publicity, suddenly the story escalates to millions. And such phenomena have happened before with coins like the 1943 copper penny or the 1955 double die penny, both of which became legends in American numismatics, fetching hundreds of thousands, and it is not inconceivable that a 1991 penny with the right combination of rarity and circumstance could be elevated to legendary $13 million status, especially if tied to a dramatic auction or high-profile collector, because in this world perception often shapes reality, and as we peel back layers of possibility, we see that the fascination lies not just in owning such a coin but in imagining how such a humble object could transform into an artifact of desire, connecting ordinary people with extraordinary fortune, and that dream keeps collectors searching rolls of pennies, buying from estate sales, hunting through change, because they believe the next coin could be the one, and the 1991 penny continues to fuel that hope, as stories circulate online and at coin shows of amazing finds. Misstruck pieces, double dies, transitional errors, and jaw-dropping auction results, creating an aura of possibility that keeps this coin in the spotlight. And when people hear that a single penny could be worth $13 million, it forces them to reconsider what they value, to realize that mistakes and imperfections can be priceless, and it also reminds us of the artistry and fallibility of the minting process, where despite machines and precision, human oversight and random chance allow treasures to slip through. And in that space between perfection and imperfection lies the magic of collectible coins. So the 1991 penny is not just a coin, it is a symbol of how small things can hold vast meaning, how rarity transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary, and how history, chance, and human desire intersect in the world of numismatics, making it one of the most talked about and desired pennies in modern times. And so as you reflect on this story, remember that the coin in your pocket may carry more than face value. It may hold a story, an error, a piece of history that could change everything. And that is why collectors never stop searching, never stop learning, and never stop dreaming about the next great discovery. So if you enjoyed this deep exploration of the 1991 penny and its incredible $13 million potential, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss more amazing stories about coins, treasures, and hidden wealth waiting to be discovered. Now this deep exploration into one of the most fascinating and surprising stories in American coinage, the 1989 1-cent coin, a tiny copper-coated zinc piece of money that in the eyes of most people represents almost no value at all, a simple penny that gets tossed into jars, left forgotten in couches, or handed over as spare change without a second thought. Yet in certain extraordinary circumstances this very coin has been linked to jaw-dropping valuations of up to $7 million, all because of rare errors, minting mistakes, and anomalies that have elevated it from the ordinary into the realm of legendary collectibles. And as we dive into this story, we will not only uncover the possible mistakes that make the 1989 penny so valuable, but also the history, the context, and the psychology of collectors that turn these errors into treasures worth millions. So let us begin by setting the stage, because by 1989 the United States Mint was long into its modern era of penny production, having switched from copper-based planchets to zinc-based ones in 1982, a change driven by rising copper prices that made the metal content of pennies worth more than their face value. And after that switch, most pennies weighed 2.5 grams and were composed mostly of zinc with a thin copper plating. But mistakes happen even in tightly controlled minting facilities. And one of the most tantalizing possibilities with the 1989 penny is that some might have been struck on leftover copper planchets weighing 3.11 grams, creating what is called a transitional error, a type of mistake that should not exist in theory yet does in practice, because older planchets can sometimes be left over in bins, feed systems, or even machinery and end up being struck years later, producing coins with the wrong metal composition. And transitional errors are among the most famous and valuable in American history, as seen with the 1943 copper cent and the 1971 D silver Eisenhower dollar. So a 1989 copper penny instead of zinc would instantly become one of the rarest and most desirable coins ever discovered, and collectors would pay astronomical prices for it, explaining how we get to the rumored $7 million valuation. But transitional planchets are only one of the possibilities, because the minting process is complex and filled with opportunities for mistakes. And when mistakes occur in dramatic ways, they create coins that collectors go crazy for. One of the most well-known types of error is the double die, where the die that strikes the coin is engraved twice at slightly misaligned angles, leaving doubling on the coin's design. And this doubling can appear in the date, in inscriptions like Liberty or I in God We Trust, or even in the fine details of Lincoln's portrait. And some double dies are so dramatic that they are visible to the naked eye, making them extremely desirable. And history shows us that double die pennies can become legendary, such as the 1955 double die cent that remains one of the most famous error coins ever, regularly selling for tens of thousands of dollars. So if a strong double die were confirmed on a 1989 penny in pristine condition, it could easily command seven-figure values at auction. Another type of error that excites collectors is the off-center strike, where the blank planchet was not seated correctly in the striking chamber, causing the design to be stamped partially off the coin, leaving part of the blank planchet exposed, and the further off-center the strike, the more dramatic the appearance, with coins showing 50% or more off-center while still displaying the full date being particularly valuable. And such errors can take a penny that would otherwise be worth 1 cent and make it worth thousands, especially if rare for that year. And then we must consider broad strike errors, which occur when the collar that holds the coin in place during striking malfunctions, allowing the coin to spread outward, producing a misshapen yet fascinating piece that collectors treasure for its unusual look, while die cracks and cuds are another category of mistake, formed when the striking die itself develops fractures or breaks, transferring raised lines or blobs onto the struck coin. And some of these cracks can be small and insignificant, but dramatic die breaks that distort Lincoln's face or obliterate parts of the design can become highly sought after, particularly when they make each coin completely unique. And the 1989 penny has been reported to show such errors in circulation, fueling rumors of incredible values. And then there are misaligned die errors, where the obverse and reverse of the coin do not line up properly, producing tilted or rotated designs that seasoned collectors immediately recognize as anomalies, adding yet another layer of intrigue. And we cannot leave out the almost mythical mule errors, where a coin is struck with mismatched dies intended for different denominations, such as a penny obverse with a dime reverse. And while no confirmed mule errors have surfaced for 1989 pennies, the possibility alone keeps collectors searching, because mule errors are among the rarest and most valuable mistakes a coin can have, often selling for astronomical amounts. So when we combine transitional planchets, double dies, off-center strikes, broad strikes, die cracks, misaligned dies, and even rumored mule errors, we see a world of possibilities that could explain how a 1989 penny might achieve a multi-million-dollar price. But there is more to the story than just the physical mistakes, because the condition of the coin plays a massive role. And in numismatics, condition is everything, with coins graded on a scale from poor to mint state red, and the closer a coin is to perfect, the higher its value. So if a rare 1989 error penny were preserved untouched since it left the mint, retaining its brilliant red luster, it could easily be elevated into the highest echelons of value, particularly if certified by grading services like PCGS or NGC. And then there is the element of demand, because value in collectibles is not only about rarity but about how much people want it. And the coin world has shown us time and again that dramatic stories fuel extraordinary prices. As with the 1943 copper penny that captured the imagination of the public and sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And when a coin becomes legendary, whether through rarity, publicity, or myth, it takes on a life of its own, with buyers willing to pay millions to own a piece of history. And the 1989 penny fits into this narrative perfectly, because it is modern enough to feel accessible yet rare enough in its error forms to feel unattainable, making it the perfect coin to capture the imagination. And part of its value comes from the fact that it inspires treasure hunting in everyday life, as people check their pockets, search through change jars, and buy rolls of pennies from banks in the hope that they might stumble across one of these extraordinary errors. And the stories of lucky finds fuel this enthusiasm further, creating a cycle of excitement where the legend of the 1989 penny grows year after year. And when news spreads that one of these coins has sold for $7 million, the dream becomes even more powerful, making everyone wonder if the next penny they find could be worth a fortune. And so the 1989 penny is more than just a coin, it is a symbol of possibility, a reminder that tiny mistakes can create enormous value, and that hidden treasures might be waiting in the most ordinary of places. And this combination of history, error, condition, rarity, and human fascination is what drives its legendary status and explains how a coin worth 1 cent in face value can be transformed into a multi-million-dollar collectible. And as we reflect on this, it becomes clear why collectors dedicate their lives to searching, why auctions for rare coins attract global attention, and why Stories like the 1989 penny endure for generations, because they remind us that the line between ordinary and extraordinary is thinner than we think, sometimes only a fraction of a gram of metal, a shifted die, or a tiny crack away. And that is the magic of numismatics, a world where imperfections become treasures and small things hold great meaning. So the next time you hold a penny from 1989, take a closer look, because you may just be holding history. And if you enjoyed this in-depth journey into the story of the 1989 penny, its $7 million valuation, and the errors and mistakes that make it so valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories about coins, treasures, and hidden wealth waiting to be discovered right under our noses.